Hey, welcome to today's conversation. I'm your host, Deidre Sirianni, and today we are going to be diving into the conversation around being an overachiever. Are you someone who is constantly looking for that next goal, that next big mountain to climb? If the answer is yes, you are in the right place, and I completely resonate with this on so many levels. There is something inside of my DNA that is always driving me forward to achieve the next thing. The problem is, though, a lot of the time when we are focusing on a goal and we are overachievers or we're high performers, sometimes we can forget about the life that we're living and we can get so focused on what we are moving towards that we can step away from the present moment in time and miss out on a lot of gifts and a lot of opportunities that are right in front of us. And so today's conversation is really about talking about the wounds of being an overachiever and how potentially a lot of the goals, a lot of the things that you might be moving towards in your life and in your business may actually be coming from a wound. Might not be what you want to hear, but it might be the truth and message that you need to hear today. And so a question I have for you is, what is driving your actions? What is causing you to be a high performer? Is it possible that as a child, you got affirmation and you were rewarded if you were the best? Or maybe you were shamed or you have a trauma from when you were younger from not being good enough. This is something that I love diving into and working through with my clients that are high performers because I went through this and I have to check myself in my work and what I do so that I'm operating from a place of alignment versus operating from a wound. So a few years ago, I was in Mexico and I was working on my first book, Turn Your Light On. And I was so excited to be in Mexico. I was staying at a retreat center with an author that I really admire, James Twyman. He's a New York Times bestselling author, and he's actually my favorite author. And he's the reason why I wanted to write a book because he inspired me through me reading one of his books years prior. And so I'm in Mexico, and at the time I hired a coach who I was calling in. And she's known as like this badass coach that helps people really scale their businesses. And I was looking for someone who was similar to me, but had been in the game quite a bit longer. So I ended up hiring this woman, investing quite a bit of money to work with her. And I was ready to hit the ground running. You know that feeling when you're like, oh, I've got a goal, I've got a mission, I got a thing, I got a project, and I just want to hit the ground running. I'm going to do the thing. And you put your blinders on to everything else. This is the mode I was in. And this is like actually a big part of who I have been for a lot of my life. So I hired this woman, and our second call, she's like, I want you to work less. I want you to do less. I want you to work like 1 or 2 hours a day max. I want you to take the weekends off. And I remember being on the call with her, looking at her through Zoom on video and just being like, who is this person? Isn't she supposed to help me scale my business? Isn't she supposed to help me get more done? That's what I was thinking. But I also knew I hired this woman as a mentor. She obviously knows what she's doing. So I need to listen to what she has to say because the truth is, in the coaching industry in general, the people who get the best results are the ones who actually listen to their coach, their mentor, or actually follow the steps that, the person who has done what you want is telling you to do, right? So I surrendered. But in the surrendering of taking a step back in my business and really only working 1 or 2 hours a day, I realized that, holy shit, who am I without my work? Who am I and what value do I bring to the world without all the things that I'm doing? And I started to hear these narratives come up through my just experience of really slowing down, where I realized that so much of my worth was connected to what I was doing in the world and how good I was at it and how endorsed I was and all of these things that really they don't have value. They do have value because I do believe and being on purpose and making your impact and all that. That's what I teach. That's what I help people do in their business. But for me, I was like, wow, like, who am I without this? And through asking myself those questions, being really freaking uncomfortable, okay, really uncomfortable, slowing down, I started to go out dancing more. I started to go to live music. I started to have more fun. I started to do more yoga. I started to tap more into my creativity. And through slowing down in my business and only working a couple hours a day, I actually grew my business significantly that first month from working with her because my energy was different. I was more connected. I was more in my heart. I was more in my creativity. I was more connected to myself, my authentic self, and also community. And so through slowing down and focusing on the right forward actions versus just doing to do, I was able to take massive inspired action for the right pieces, but also I was able to see all of the ways in my life I was shutting people out. I was blocking myself from true connection because I was hiding behind my work. And I didn't even realize I was doing it, guys. So as you're listening to this, I just want to share that a lot of the things that we do, okay, most of the actions that we take actually come from our subconscious mind, okay? So if most of the actions we take come from our subconscious mind, until we make them conscious, until we hear a story or something resonates or we're learning something new, a lot of the time we don't see how a lot of our actions, where they come from. And that's really what this episode is about, this conversation. I really want to talk about the wound of overachievers because I've had this and I've had to overcome that. And it's a very different feeling today, years later, operating from a place of purpose, alignment, and flow versus just purpose, do. I was very in my masculine for a long time, and it came from never feeling like I was enough. And subconsciously, a fear that if I am not the best, if I'm not always doing, then who am I? And I see this a lot with high performers. I see this a lot with business owners, and it can lead to burnout. It can lead to so many different symptoms of just not feeling the way that we want to feel in life. So if you're someone who's always go, 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 maybe this is just a little message for you to slow down, to drop into how you feel, to connect with people. And I want to share a little bit about how this wound shows up because I mentioned one way, right? I was like, wow, I've disconnected from people to achieve goals. And that was like what was going on in my life. I was just goal. And there might be seasons in entrepreneurship. There might be seasons in our life where we're more focused on one thing. But if you're someone who is the lone wolf, you're always just by yourself, probably comes from a wound. Okay. I see it's a lot in community as people start to come into community, start to come into my mastermind, start to come into my space. They're like, I'm a lone wolf. Well, why are you a lone wolf? Are you a lone wolf because you don't trust people, because you have wounds? What is it? Do you isolate? How do you block yourself from connecting with people and really going deep? A lot of the actions that we take, again, come from wounds and our subconscious mind, which is wild, which is why doing the subconscious work is so powerful if you're wanting to really level up in your life. And I'm not just talking about leveling up with your goals and your business 100%. I'm all about achieving and doing things, but also like with how you feel and how you want to feel in the life that you really want to create on all levels. That could be with your health. That could be with your business. If you have a business, that can be in your relationships. That can be in so many different areas. The more we take the unconscious and we make it conscious, the more we have choice to create something new. And that's really what this conversation's about. And so for my high achievers that are listening right now, I want to share another story with you. So I talk a little bit about this in my book, Turn Your Light On. If you're interested in doing more of that deeper work around getting things out of the way that might be in the way that are blocking you from really showing up powerfully for your life, that's a great resource. We also have an 8-week program where you're able to go a lot deeper, and there's a lot of different exercises. So you can always check those out and go deeper with this work as well. So as I want to share a little bit about how this wound can show up, because I'm using the word wound just as a generic word because it's something that happened that is affecting you today, but maybe it was a positive experience you had. So this high achieving, overachieving way of being can come from a couple different experiences. There can be two people who are identical, okay, had the same experience as a child, but that same experience can mean two different things. And I want to break this down because this is really what I like to call an imprint. So an imprint is very much like a wound or like a trauma, except for with an imprint, it can oftentimes be a good feeling that you have that's anchored in an experience, whereas a trauma can be potentially a negative experience that's anchored in. Both a trauma, a wound, as well as an imprint can all have negative consequences in our life if we're not able to have awareness around them and do some of the completing and healing work around them, which is why I wanted to bring this up. And I do talk about this in a full chapter of my book, Turn Your Light On, as well as in my program, Turn Your Light On, because it's an essential piece to fully waking up to who we are and who we're meant to be, our full potential and all of that. So with that, you can be someone who had the exact same experience. Okay. You could be a child and maybe your parent gave you so much affirmation when you got an A, but when you got a B, they didn't give you any affirmation. So you only got rewarded. You only received love from a parent when you got an A or when you were the best. You got a ton of praise. Okay. So one child of the two who had the same thing happen in the same experience, the same moment in time, can actually take that into two different arenas, two different routes, two different pathways as they grow and as they evolve as adults. And you might be listening to this just because you press play and you're still listening because maybe your soul is like, I'm supposed to listen to this episode even though I don't resonate as a high achiever. So pay attention to that, because I do believe a lot of the time when we're drawn to people, places, and teachers and all of those things, there's something there for us. So maybe you're listening and you're like, I don't think I'm a high achiever, but maybe you had a similar experience to what I'm about to talk about, what I'm about to share right now, that's impacting you in your life right now, and you can break free from it. So option one, child one, when they received affirmation, when they were the best, they had this moment in time where they're like, when I'm the best, I receive love from others. So the driving force behind that child as they become an adult is, when I'm the best, I get love. So it's conditional. It can become this conditional subconscious belief of, I only will be loved if I am the best, if I am doing things in the world that are seen in a certain way, right? This energy of, I need to prove, I need to do, I need to continue to build, create, and all of that. And I can see this very clearly in a lot of really high level entrepreneurs. There's this energy, there's this drive to do. And if we're not careful and we haven't done some of this work on understanding where some of these drivers come from, it can sabotage our health, it can sabotage our relationships, and it can also sabotage so many other parts of our life because we are only focused on one thing and we're willing to sacrifice everything else in order to be the best or in order to produce XYZ. So what I mean by that is, let's say you are a high achiever and you're a woman and you're go, 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 you don't have time for a relationship. You don't have space for a partner. You don't have space for a man. So you are not feeling great in your 30s and 40s and beyond because you can't quite attract a man that wants to stay, or things just never tend to work out for you in relationship. But on a deeper level, what may be happening beneath the surface is you are never going to feel fully worthy of receiving love because of that imprint in childhood. So instead of settling in a relationship, and I say settling as in relaxing into a relationship, being with a person and letting them fully see you, you hide behind your achievements, you hide behind your wounds, your work, sorry, and you let that be the driving force of your life because you haven't learned to truly love yourself and accept yourself without your achievements. And so what happens with the masculine is we can push men away, right? They don't feel needed. We don't let them get close enough. And then what happens is we sabotage relationships, right? And I heard this a lot with women who are going after their dreams and their goals. It's like, you know what? I don't want to give up what I'm doing for a partner. And I don't think you have to give up what you're doing for a partner. But I feel that if you are constantly go, 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 and you're not letting someone in, that is from a wound. That is from an experience of I don't feel safe not doing. And so as women we can get stuck in this boss babe or hyper masculine way of being and not letting a man come in. So it's really interesting to look at. That could be a whole other episode. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about that. Actually, I think that's a great idea. We'll talk a little bit about that in another episode in the future. But for now, what I'm really trying to say is this wound, or this imprint, I should say, positive experience during childhood is when I do great externally with something, when I get an A plus, etc., I am loved. And that can be the driving force behind a lot of success, but it also can be the driving force behind never really letting a partner in, never really showing up for friendships, being a lone wolf, pushing people away. Oh, and really having other patterns that cause you not to feel the way you want to feel, no matter what milestone or achievement you get to. And this happened to me years ago, not just when I was living in Mexico, but years prior. I remember when I was married years ago, and I remember looking around at my life and wondering if everyone was really as happy as they seemed, or if they were pretending as much as me. Because 10 years ago, I got married when I was very young. I got married when I was 23. I was so stuck in the doing, achieving, proving subconsciously that I wasn't actually like enjoying my life. I felt like I was just doing, checking things off a list. And I never really felt proud of myself. I never really felt like I belonged anywhere. I never really felt like it was it. And I like to talk about the it factor, because when something is it, you can feel it, right? You're like, yes, it. This is it. And so what I mean by it is when my favorite dish is coming to the table. So for example, red Thai curry, there's a specific restaurant in Vancouver that I'm obsessed with. When it comes to the table and I'm eating it, I am not thinking about anything else but that. I'm like, this is so freaking good. It's it. This is it, right? But when I'm eating stuff that doesn't feel like it's it, like meh, okay food, I'm not satisfied. Never going to be satisfied. We're never going to be satisfied living a life that's not it. We're always going to be looking for the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, when we haven't really aligned with our soul, with who we are and our true identity. And when these wounds that come from imprints are running the show. And yes, we may be chasing goals, we might be achieving the goals, but it's never going to feel the way that you want it to feel when these other parts of yourself aren't being addressed there. They don't have room to speak. And how it really showed up for me was I got sick, and I also felt like I was living a life that didn't feel like my own. And this is a common theme that a lot of people have, never feeling satisfied no matter how much money you make, what you achieve, what you do, never feeling happy in a relationship, never feeling like anything's good enough. It's because you're off track with your soul. And so being a high achiever can be fun in a lot of ways. But if the deeper healing around these core wounds or imprints haven't been completed, it can show up as a life of driving people away, not having great relationships, suffering with your health, and just never feeling like anything you do is enough. So if that's you and you're wanting to do some deeper work on that, you can always connect and see if one of our offerings is aligned. But this is a conversation that I wanted to have today because this is something that's happening on so many different levels. And it's easy to think, oh, I'm just a high achiever. This is who I am. And it probably is who you are. But if it doesn't feel the way you want it to feel, there's something that hasn't been really felt, seen, understood, or healed from different imprints from childhood. And when you're able to heal and transform them, you can still be a high achiever and still do all the things, but you can also have an amazing relationship. You can also feel great and connected to community. You don't have to be the lone wolf, and you can really be your true authentic self without fear of being potentially rejected or not being enough. And that's where you can really let love into your life on a deeper level. This conversation wasn't intended to talk about love and relationship, but you know what? It had to be said because I see this happen all the time with women and men. And it's just something that if you are a higher achiever and you have this wound or this imprint, which essentially is a wound because it's causing, pain in your life that you're maybe not fully aware of. If this isn't addressed, it's going to cause a lot of upset in your life, right? Not just like, why am I alone? Well, why am I having a hard time connecting? Why am I not satisfied? When you're able to change that and heal that, your life can have so much more fulfillment. And I know it's made huge changes in my life over the years. I have closer friendships. I have a great relationship. There's all these different parts of my life that have come together on a much more meaningful level because I've done some of that work. And also when I'm choosing to go after goals, I'm not weighing my self-worth with the outcome of the goal. And when your whole self-worth and identity is tied around your business or achieving a goal or being the best, you're never going to feel good enough and you're never going to fully feel like you can just be. So one way is how that imprint of, being rewarded for being the best as a child can show up. Now let's talk about the other way it can show up. So the second way this might show up in your life is, again, you were rewarded every time you were the best. And if you weren't the best, you weren't rewarded or you didn't get the love that you wanted. So the first description is how a lot of people show up if you identify as a high performer. If you don't identify as a high performer, but you're listening to this show, you're listening to this podcast, this might be for you. This might be exactly why you're listening. And that is the opposite can happen. If you were only loved and rewarded when you were the best, what can happen is that can also turn into a way that you control your life. It can still control your life. And this is how it can show up. On a subconscious level, you may feel that if I'm not the best, I do not want to be in those rooms. If I'm not going to be the best, I don't even want to try. So how this may show up in your life from a core wound, from this imprint, as I mentioned, even though potentially it was a good experience when you were a child, you got love and reward for being good or getting an A or being the best at the things you do, this can also cause you to play small in your life, a lot smaller than you want to play. So what happens is you suss out environments. And if you're not the best, if you're not going to succeed in that environment, you most likely avoid environments that are going to cause you to feel like you are not enough, specifically if you are not the best. So this may show up as you actually going into jobs and roles that you know you're going to be the best at and you're going to get rewarded at, but are not outside of your comfort zone. So, what this can look like and manifest as is you staying in the same location, you staying in the same job, you staying in the same career, you staying in the same environment, or very sidestepping type of environments rather than actually taking leaps of courage and faith and big strides in your life. You probably play it small. You probably do the things that you're good at and that you are the leader, but you avoid rooms where you are not going to be the person that's looked at and people come to for advice. So what this can look like is, again, as I mentioned, you've seen in a job, a career, or an environment that you've always been great at. Even if maybe your soul or a part of you is asking you to do something different. Maybe that's a call to become an entrepreneur. Maybe that's a call to go after a dream, to take a course, to do something bigger than you have before. But fear comes over because there's this deep feeling of not feeling good enough, or what if I'm not the best, that you can't handle it because you crave that love and attention that you got as a child. So as you can see in both circumstances, right, how the child internalized it, it can have a negative impact on our life, regardless of how we internalize it. So the cool thing about this is when we go and we do some of this completion work, we do some of the healing work, and we're conscious of it, we can start to take steps that are different in the right direction where we can have it all, where that second variation that I just shared of the child who internalized of, I have to be the best, so I'll only go in environments where I am the best. Well, if you want to be the best in the world at something, you have to get outside of your environment to grow and learn. So this person will be stuck in their comfort zone and have a really hard time leaving or stepping away from things that stretch them, where they may not look smart, or they may not feel adequate, or they may not be the biggest fish in the sea, right? And so that can be a very small life if we're constantly staying in our comfort zone. But with doing some of this deeper healing work, this deeper completion work, and removing some of those subconscious triggers that happen, now what can happen is you can take conscious actions and you can have the conscious choice to be a conscious creator and start to get outside of your comfort zone and know that no, although you were rewarded, although you had those imprints from childhood, that you are only loved if you're the best, that's actually not true. And you can be loved even when you're not the best, even in the spaces of learning, even in the spaces of vulnerability. So when you look at both of those examples, it's the same experience from childhood. It's not a trauma, but it can impact you in a negative way in your life. And that's why I really want to have this conversation around being a overachiever and this core wound of I'm never going to be enough, or this core imprint of I'm only loved if I'm the best. This is something that, as I mentioned, was very common for me in my life and still pops up sometimes for me. But when you learn to make it work for you rather than against you, it opens up so much for you. So if this is showing up in your life and you're wanting to do some deeper work on it, again, Turn Your Light On book might be a great resource for you. There's some incredible exercises in there, as well as the Turn Your Light On 8-week program. I hope that you've enjoyed today's conversation. If you have, please go ahead and leave us a review. And we're doing an incredible giveaway right now. When you leave a review and you take a photo, a snapshot of it, and you submit it to us, you email it to us at hello@radicallyaligned.com, you're going to be entered in to win our 8-week program, Turn Your Light On. That's all about removing obstacles and barriers that are blocking you from waking up to the truth of who you are and who you're meant to be, which is your authentic, true north, who you really are, and your authentic self. So really excited about that. And what else was I going to say? I'm just really excited about this show. I really appreciate you listening. Please share it with a friend who you feel needs to hear this, who needs to watch this. And we'd love to hear what topics you want to hear from us. So please feel free to share it at hello@radicallyaligned.com. Sending you lots of love. And I hope that you enjoyed this conversation today. If you did, please go ahead, subscribe, and leave us a review.